I wonder the things that I say on this thing that I think are not live but are. For example, right now, hey, what's up, people? This is the Option Podcast. This is episode 232. No, I am not talking to myself. I am talking to Ashley Clark. He's right there. She's right there. They're right there. Buckle up, people. The episode starts right now. And oh, the heck with that. That's just staying up. We're live, people. That's just staying up. That's it. You know why? Because it doesn't matter about the intro. It doesn't matter about my sloppy dimensions. It only matters about my guest. That is her, Ashley Clark. Gotta give the people what they want. Gotta give the people what they want. I'm glad I had a full camera on that. It's okay. You tend to pick up things that go limp. Just make sure it stays up, right? I mean, we show a special aptitude in that field, Ashley. So going split screen, taking my own show, but got one guest, and there we are. So, what's up?
Not a whole lot. It's a Friday after I spent last weekend in Vegas, and I finally got some sleep last night. So that's good.
You know, it's wild. Like you and I, when we go to Red Rock or whatever, we always find time at night to sing karaoke and just catch up, have food, have a good time. But I understand you weren't feeling so hot.
No, not this tournament. I actually was a very responsible coach and went to bed early, but then didn't sleep. And then I ended up getting sick, some sort of bug or food poisoning. But it was one of the roughest Vegas tournaments, both as like personal, physical, and then also with my team. So.
Yeah, and for the program directors, I think they should tell coaches when to go to bed. And his whole speech about winning the battle at night helps you win the battle tomorrow. I'm just gonna say this to the camera: why don't you mind your freaking business, all right? When I go to bed, mind your business, all right? So, with that being said, I wanted to share there's a joke. There's a movie called, for everybody listening, there's a movie called Class Act. It's with Kid and Play. And one is like a really nerdy guy, and one is like a street kid. And their school identifications got switched. So the ghetto kid wound up in the smart school and found out like the walls were white, and like everybody was wearing like real clothes at school. And then like the other section of the school is like spray paint on the walls. And so they're trying to bide their time, right? And trying to help each other out. So Play, who's the ghetto guy, is trying to teach Kid like the lingo. So Kid is like, so let me get this straight. He says, I be fly if I get on the plane, right? And he says, that depends. He's like, depends on what? He says, on what you be wearing. And he's like, that's stupid. He's like, thank you. He's like, did you hear me? I said, that's stupid. He's like, did you hear me? I said, thank you. He's like, are you deaf? He's like, yes.
That's so funny. How old is that movie?
90s. It was maybe 3 years removed from the legendary, iconic House Party, which is what I would call a comedic hip hop cult. Kid and Play with the box. God bless his soul, Robin Harris, who played the father, the innovator of Baby's Kids. So how'd you do? You tell everybody what club you're with.
So I coach for Surfside Volleyball Club. This year I have a 17 twos team that's competitive, and then a developmental 13s team. So this last weekend I was there with my 17s team. And we were out of contention for our bid on the first day, which is always a challenge of, trying to keep the buy-in, but also trying to get resilience out of them, right? Because we still have 2 more days of volleyball. We still have another qualifier we're going to in 2 weeks, and we're still preparing for our local tournaments as well as the end of the year. So the question we asked our team was, what do we want to be? What do we want others to look at us and say about us? And how do we want to respond when things get tough? Because life gets tough. And at the end of the day, volleyball is just an avenue to be teaching us and teaching these kids like how to respond, because life is challenging. Relationships are challenging. Everything. Life's tough. Get a helmet. It's so true. So even as I was sick in Vegas, trying to lead by example and being like, no, I'm still going to show up. I'm going to tell you that I'm not physically my best, but I'm going to give you 100% of whatever I have, and being open with them about that, right? Because there's times where our athletes don't feel their best for whatever reason. And to me, it's not a cop out for, oh, we're not feeling good or we played bad yesterday or whatever the case is. It's more, this is where we are now. And then how can we take where we are now to continue to learn and improve to where we want to be at the end of the season, at the next tournament, in life, so on and so forth.
I think there's a general term that gets overlooked because it's so too general, it's too broad, right? You win or you learn, right?
Ooh.
That's it's John Mayer's probably not the first person I learned that from. I was with him. I was a director of operations for 2 years at LMU, and by the way, they're doing wow. Talk about the 5-year plan. Who are
Hit it
they?
out of the
Are
park.
they on fire? They
Yep.
whooped this weekend. They whooped everybody's behind. But I'll jump off and back on that later. But you win or you learn is something that gets a bad rep because everybody's like, okay, right? That can mean anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what they're missing the point is it could mean anything, right? And you can
Yes.
use that for everything. And why not use it for the situation that you are going through or have went through this weekend, and maybe in the near distant future might rear its ugly head again, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, we win or we learn. I like because, and I'd like to change that to you win and you learn, right? Because if you win, you always have to do discoveries,
Yep.
right? You always have to do discoveries, and I commend you because when you lead by example, and like the parents and the kids are like, man, she's up against it, and here she stands tall, right?
Right. Right.
Like Bon Jovi, I've seen a million faces and I rock them all, right? So,
Yeah.
um, so first day you said was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, we're gonna talk about human design, ACC. We're gonna talk about some fun stuff, some studies. We're gonna talk real volleyball today, so bear with me. But I'm only talking about this because the majority of the country was at Red Rock,
Yep.
or Lone Star is the other big one, and we're gonna talk about what this tournament's mean to clubs too. But guys, win or you learn basically means if you lose, you got a lot of work to do, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and use it as a learning experience. And if you win, where can you go from there, right?
Yep.
So
Well, I think you're learning whether you're winning or losing. I just think losing, whether if you don't want to be losing, then it's a bigger opportunity to learn because you don't want to experience that feeling again, right? Or that environment or situation again. So what can you do? What do you have control over to be able to change that outcome in the future, right? And how great is that for life, right? You don't like a job interview you didn't get the job. Okay, I'm going to do better the next interview. Oh, okay, this person, the way I approached some personal conflict didn't work out. So the next time I approach a conflict that's like that, I'm going to approach it differently. But yeah, the first day we were first seed in our pool. We ended up taking a third, so out of contention right away. Second day, I think we did another 1-2 day, so it was another rough day. And then the last day we went 2-0. So again, going 2 days of volleyball, and that was the longest tournament we played so far. We've been playing 1-day tournaments, so that's another thing, right? Playing 3 days in a row, and asking kids to step up into roles and do jobs more than their normal role and job. It's all learning curve, and I see it because I've been doing this for so long, and I just take it in stride, and I go, hey kids, if I'm not worried about it as your coach, you can't be worrying about it. You shank however many balls. Okay, cool. If I'm not telling you a correction or like pulling you out of the game, next ball.
yeah,
Like
indeed.
next play. It doesn't even matter because I will tell you that's my job. My job is to give you feedback and tell you when things are a concern or what we have to fix to go forward. But if I'm not touching it, it's either going to work itself out on its own, right? Or there's another solution for the problem or whatever it is that I'm going to let you know later.
Mm-hmm.
So
Here's what I like to do, and again, I'm going to use up all my John Mayer references in the beginning of this podcast and just get that part of my life over with, because I've never been in the situation where I came in the most experienced coach, right? But left like I was in the head of a genius, right?
Yeah.
John would be the first one to tell you. Aaron Mansfield, Betsy may or may not, who cares about her, but they'll be the first ones to say, "Wow, Jason came in just like a skill set Nazi. He knows what he's doing, But and they came to just share, because I came from a different perspective, to share new ideas. Agree with me, disagree, but they got screwed, dude. I'm the one that came out of that relationship. I'm learning more, but going back to what he's saying, what I would do as a practice for tournaments, and I would do it one or two ways. We would have something called a cool down stretch at the end of the last game. Like some people just run to their parents. We, as a group, we circle up, we have a cool down stretch. And I go across and randomly say, Greg, what's one thing you thought Wyatt did well, right? And Greg will tell Wyatt one thing he thought he did well, maybe two things. And then I'll go to Wyatt. What's one thing you want to do better, right? And Wyatt's like, okay, I want to do this. And then I do it with two other people, Cole, what do you want? What's something, Sid did well. I think Sid did this, right? Whatever. So what you do is you do that in the cool down stretch, maybe four in intervals of 4 pairs.
Okay.
And what happens is everyone starts listening to each other, and they two things happen. They appreciate the person's journey and agree where they can improve, but they also see how it applies to them, which is why everybody listens to everybody, right?
Yep.
The other way I do it, like if we have a time constraints thing, and if it's a different mood, I would just separate them in pairs, and so if I have a 14 kid roster, I'd have 7 pairs, and they would do something we John and I call post game discoveries, except it's post tournament discoveries, but we do it every day of every tournament. If it's a 3-day tournament, we're going to do it 3 times.
Yeah.
Right. So that's been a very useful tool, because when you lose, right, it's something, and especially for girls volleyball, you're coaching girls still, right?
Yep.
That all the scientists, but all the coaches agree that sisterhood and togetherness and the inseparable chain is what keeps women's volleyball together, right? When you have these guy coaches that have limited experience coaching girls, right, but have like Division I experience or pro experience with the guys, they're gonna develop good female players, but they're gonna keep wondering why they're losing, and it's because they're missing the concept of what demographic of people are inspired by leadership.
Yep.
And what demographic of people are inspired and kept by never breaking the chain.
Yeah.
There's nothing more divisive and traumatic as a coach than having a girls team that has cliques. It is so dangerous, because as a coach, you're looking the wrong way when you get fired, right? Right. I mean, I'm saying that but I mean,
right.
maybe not get fired, but you don't see the escalation coming, because they're really good at hiding it, and you don't see it until it's escalated in this verbal way, or
See, I actually see stuff very early. So because I'm a woman, and because I've coached girls sports pretty much my whole life and been inside of it as an athlete, I actually see it coming a mile away. So by the time I'm putting together my team during the clinics and tryout period, I'm already identifying, okay, where are my leaders? Where am I going to have to push some of these kids? What kids might be pushing back? The caveat or the question is, how long do you kind of let it go before it starts to affect the team, right? So I can see that there's an issue brewing, but if the team seems unaffected by it, I'm going to kind of let it float the surface until it's like everybody sees it, it's in our face, and then I've got to pull in the reins, if that makes sense. And that might be letting it go too long.
I was going to say, at that point, how do you pull in the reins?
Well, to me, it's more because I can see stuff ahead of time, ahead of the athletes. It's more
It's a
like,
gift, dude.
I know that it's going to be an issue, but I'm also not going to address it because the other people don't see it as an issue yet. So once everybody else starts to see it, they appreciate when I step in and address it. And at that point, it's literally like something along the lines of, hey, are you doing your best to be a positive contributor to this team? Right? And we have a conversation. Yes, no, maybe. Well, I think I'm doing this well. I think I'm doing that not so well, whatever. Okay. I hear you. All right. What are some areas that you can add value or change some of that negativity into positivity? And then I have no qualms with addressing the team and being like, hey, we've got some issues going on right now. This is how I intend to handle and address the issues. You know, if you need to have a conversation with me on the side or you have some other concern or question, please bring it to my attention. But again, like, you see it, you try to mitigate it by putting them in different partnerships, by creating different groups and teams and practices. But again, if I perceive a problem that nobody else sees or feels yet, I can't address it because it's not important to them.
Right.
Right. And I was having this conversation this weekend. As coaches, yeah, we have experience. Yeah, we train. Yeah, we have this knowledge base, right? But our knowledge only takes us to the sideline. And then we're not on the court with them. So the experience of the kids that are on the court living that is different than what we perceive or see from the sideline. So then whatever they feel on the court, you have to address then. Okay, I'm an outsider. I see it. I think this is what's happening, but then the kids confirm. And then we can move forward because everybody's got the same understanding that this issue exists. And then we want to problem solve it moving forward.
Right. I would also suggest that just because coaches are prioritizing the players, like when it's time to actually play a game, the players take priority. But it doesn't mean that we should omit the other lurking variable, what makes the coaches comfortable and
Yeah.
the best way they can do their job, right?
Yes.
We understand where I'd like as a given, before we even take this conversation any further, as a given, we both agree that the players, if there's an order priority, it's the players. Always,
100%.
right? You know, parents are just
We're here to serve as
right?
coaches.
Then there's coaches and there's us. So, in theater, there's a style of theater called Sanford Meisner and Stanislavski. And just to sum it up in a nutshell, right? Because it's a volleyball podcast, and they're like, this asshole's talking about theater. And in theater, Stanislavski, you need a reason to get up and move across the room. Because that's a directorial thing, and you have to have you understand through your process and preparation, you're understanding the literature and the application, and if you're moving, you need a reason to, right?
Yep.
And then there's Michael Chekhov, right? Michael Chekhov says, get up and move across the room. Don't need a reason to. Come back. Don't feel anything. Feel a certain way about it. Do it again. Right? Do it again. How you feel now? I feel this way. I feel that way. And their discoveries to make them a better performer happens in this very, very unconventional but still organic way, right?
Right.
And I'm not suggesting one is better than the other, even though there's a little bias on my voice, which I favor the latter, right?
Yeah.
And it was weird because the theater school I went to, they were Meisner or whatever, and they're just like, we don't know what do we do with this returning adult student? But the point I was trying to make was, and I'm coming full circle with this, guys, and you guys as coaches will appreciate this, right? Jason Olive is the kind of coach that he's like, free, ball's over, free, hey, next play, and every play, hey, Lauren, come here, boom, 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 right? And they're this way, 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 right? And if the kids are used to that form of training from the beginning in their preseason, they function well under their circumstances, right?
Yep.
And then you have me. And it's weird because I'm known for being loud and boisterous. I'm like extroverted, but anyone that's ever seen me coach at a high level, I'm like Pat Riley. If something good happens or if something bad happens, I'm sit on my Brooklyn butt, and my face shows you it's exactly what I expected to happen.
Right.
And that's because their process and preparation came from me just throwing in a question here, throwing in a question there, try it again, and allowing them to self-correct. And when they're self-correcting, they're communicating, and they find themselves doing less this, right?
Yep.
This, right? Now, here's the thing. You really, if those are the choices you make, and this is, I'm not, and there are other styles of coaching, right? I'm not trying to drag us into some false dichotomy. It's either this way or that way. But what you don't want to do is have two coaches on your bench that are both ways. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So as far as process and preparation as coaches, we have a decision to make on how we want to prepare our team. And I always, my bias always makes one sound more noble than the other, but I'm doing the best I can to understand that or make other people understand that there are more than one way to skin a cat.
100%.
But getting back to how's it related to what you just said, process and preparation. Some people, like, you're very good at spotting it a mile away, and for that, I say good for you, because that's a gift, and whether that can be taught or not, I will sit the rest of the podcast and you will teach me how. The other way is prevention.
Yeah.
Like preventing something from happening. Like if you see something bullying or whatever, like if someone's like, you're supposed to do that, and I might come in and say, hey, that's your sister. What are you doing? That's your sister, right? You do that in the beginning, all of a sudden, there's this investment, right? And it's something you really don't see when you're winning, unless parents are concerned about playing time. But when you start losing, and when people start addressing things that they're just coming up with things on why they're losing, and some things are true and some things are not, you're just more prepared as a coach.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. And I think too, like you just hit on it, when you lose, that's where it's like your colors start to show, and it goes, okay, what is it trying to show us right now? What can we control? What do we need to work on? What are the problems we need to address? But what you hit on though, as far as like the differences of training and coaching approaches, how you prepare, so on and so forth, to me, there are so many ways, as you said, to skin the cat. The question is, how do you decide as a coach what way works best for you? And then even more important, what works best for your group of athletes and then the individuals within it, right? So on a team, it's like group matters, then individual matters, and then the team matters. But if you don't, and then the coach. But if you don't have the individual buy-in, what do they care about the team? Right? So that middle layer is where the foundation is built. And that's why I've started to use human design, because I think human design can show you why you lean toward letting them try and error things, or why I will tell them, hey, this doesn't matter right now, but in 2 months from now, this is going to matter. So it's your choice whether you want to work on it today or whether you want to see the problem in 2 months and work on it then. Right.
Now, I've done some studying up on human design, but it was more from a civilian perspective than the soldier perspective. I'm just going to, all intents and purposes, I'm going to use soldiers for players and coaches, and civilians for people who use human design for everything else.
Okay.
It's unfair to ask you to give me a brief synopsis of it, and I don't necessarily want you to be brief, but I need you to educate our audience on what you mean by human design, ACC, and how it applies to sports. Let's start with human design.
Human design. Okay, so human design is, the easiest way to explain it is it's a self-awareness tool that is based in a lot of ancient wisdoms like astrology, I Ching, Kabbalah, the chakra system, so on, and quantum physics. And so what it'll show you is basically you've taken a personality test before. A lot of people at the very basic, you can consider this a personality test, except personality tests, they can change based on how you're feeling or an environment you're in. Your human design doesn't change. Your human design is based on 2 very distinct points in time. The first point is 88 days before you're born. It says that there is like a spiritual being or energy that enters into your body.
Like a rapport, yeah.
Yep. And then the day that you're born, there is like a body conscious wisdom that then enters your being and your soul. And so it's how those two pieces, those points in time, intersect to create the energetic beings that we are. And human design can show us different things like what energy is consistent within us. Do we have communication energy that flows freely? You and I both have that. Do we have an open head and ajna, which you do, which makes you open-minded to different things that come in versus closed-minded and fixated on thinking? It talks about things like whether you have energy in your root or not, right? So what is your driving force to do the work or not do the work? So it can tell you a lot of things like that. It can tell you how you communicate. It can show you different strengths. It can show you how you learn, how you take in information, how you interact with others, and all sorts of stuff. The basics, and I'll apply this to you and I because people will see this as they go through. So there are 5 energy types in human design. The first one is a manifester. They make about 7% of our population. They inspire and initiate. So these people, they will say something that inspires you, and then you go out and do whatever it was. Then there's generators. Generators are the sacral sustainable workers. So they have a defined sacral, which means they have access to sustainable energy as long as they're lit up about what they're doing. That makes up about 70% of our population. So our world is a generator world. Go do more. Work, grind, do, right? Then we have manifesting generators. That's you. You're the most powerful energy type is what they say, because you have the ability to both inspire and initiate, and also sacral energy to continue the work. Manifesting generators like yourself also often like to have lots of different things going on at once and jump from one thing to the other. And they often move very, very fast and can get frustrated if people don't move at their speed. I am a projector.
Sounds like someone I know. Yeah.
Right? So the 4th type, I'm a projector, which is supposed to be the wisdom guide seer. I'm here to guide the energy types, show them what their strengths are, and then put them on to more efficient pathways to their life purpose. And then 1% of our population are called reflectors. I actually have, my first reflector I ever met is on my 13s team. These people are completely undefined in all areas of their chart, which means they're susceptible to their environment at all times.
They're shapeshifters.
Correct.
Right.
So they are meant to reflect back it gives me goosebumps. Reflectors reflect back the energy of the environment or the group. So I find myself as the seer and the guide watching the reflector on my team, because she will, if energy's good, she talks. Energy's bad, she starts to kind of come in and be quiet. And I use it as kind of a pinpoint to how the group is, because she reflects back to me what those things are.
Right.
So that's kind of we'll call it the surface of human design. AAC are my initials, Ashley Ann Clark.
Okay.
And I've taken that to...
Couldn't find that on the internet, but go ahead.
to the business called Alchemy for Athletes and Coaches. So alchemy is kind of, the way I look at it, a magical transformation of life, right? Evolution. And so for me, I want to use human design to show coaches, athletes, and parents how to transform the way they approach athletics, and then how that transfers and relates into life.
Right. I find it interesting because alchemy, as an original definition, was an 1800s thing where it was a chemical science of people that were trying to turn common lead into silver.
Yep.
Right. And then later common lead into gold, which by the way, I mean, since we're on this Big Bang Theory thing, phosphorus was discovered by an alchemist trying to turn common lead into silver. Henning Brand was the one who discovered this in the 1860s or something like that. He discovered phosphorus, so which is on the periodic
Yep.
chart of elements. I'm
Yep.
like, how do you make an element from an element? You don't. You discover it, right? It's
Yeah.
like, what's
Yeah.
aluminum made of, guys? Tin? No, aluminum's made of aluminum. That's what we used to say in Brooklyn.
It is the thing.
That's how dumb us Brooklynites are. Say the word tin 3 times. Tin, tin, tin. What's aluminum made of?
Tin.
And then
Gotcha.
and then our stupid animal
Gotcha.
impulse to say that.
Oh God.
So I guess my question of human design, there has to be, like a human design then / human correction, right? So, because if they're basing it off, partially off of the chakra system, right? And the chakra system, your first chakra is your right to exist, right? That's just your security, your secure blanket. Second chakra, sacrum, iliac crest, is your ability to feel, right? It might be your fluids, your sex, your energy. Your third chakra is your kind of where your lumbar spine is. That's your power, right? Your ego identity. Your fourth chakra is your ability to love and be loved. That's your heart identity. Your fifth one, just a brief, sorry, just
Keep
going through them one at a time, guys.
Keep going.
Where your cervical spine is, your fifth chakra is the ability to speak and hear the truth, right?
Yep.
Sixth one is your ability to see, metaphorically or whatever. And your second one, which is the unfounded one, is the ability to know, right? So but my point is, with these exploded versions of those chakras are something we call the imploded versions. So the opposite of your security is fear, right? Your opposite of the fluids things is guilt. The opposite of the other is shame. The opposite of the ability to love and be loved is grief. Speak and hear the truth, of course, the opposite is lies. The ability to see, of course, is blindness. And the second one is detachment. So as these kids, the 88 days you were talking about, and they're coming to the womb and out of the womb, there's there are phases that cannot be ignored in life that go from toddler to child to teenager, teenager to young adult, and young adult to full adult, where
Conditioning.
never mind the physical thing. Physical goes without saying. They're physically growing, but they're also psychologically growing, right? So my question about human design is, a human design just designed, par for the course, to be a launching point of what you can be, or is it a diagnosis for people to follow the path of least resistance?
Both. So we can agree on this. We all get born with certain things kind of already, DNA, genetics, things ingrained in us already. And then through our parents, through our environment, through our culture, we get conditioned a certain way. Right? And a lot of times our conditioning is anti or opposite of what we're actually energetically designed to be by the higher power or whatever designed us, right? And so it can be, so I think we can use human design to help curve a lot of mental health issues, depression, anxiety, and things that we experience in our life. Because if we knew what we were designed to do, we would then be able to take the path of least resistance. We would be aligned. We would feel good about the choices we're making because we're making them based on who we really are and what is authentic to us, versus being conditioned by, for example, what our parents, both my parents are generator types. My mom's a manifesting generator and my dad's a generator. So I was taught my entire life that I had to do more. Hard work pays off. Show up and do the work. I mean, I worked 4 jobs in my 20s and then woke up in my 30s and I go, what do I have to show for this besides experience and learning and knowledge, right? Well, lo and behold, projectors are only supposed to work like 3 hours a day. That's our ideal work time. And the rest of the time, I'm supposed to do whatever I enjoy. Working out, calling friends, connecting, napping, right? So I was conditioned for a long time, and then I found human design and I go, oh my gosh, yes, can I do these things? 100%. But guess what's on the other side of doing these things? Burnout.
Right.
And feeling like I'm not enough. Whereas when I've flipped the script and leaned into my human design, I find relaxation. I find authenticity. I find, you know what? I know why Vegas kicked my butt. It's because the energy is flowing through me at a pace that I can't control. So when I don't have time to disconnect from that energy flowing through my body, it exhausts me. And it's not for lack of trying or a lack of awareness. It just is
Right.
when I put my nervous system through that. So to answer your question, it can do both. It can show you midlife crisis, why you've gotten to this point and what you can actively do to turn that around. Or it can show you at an early age. I have a 14-year-old boy.
Which is what we're talking about, right? We're talking
Correct.
about psychological development to that full adult.
Yes, I'm seeing a 14-year-old with his mom, and we're talking about human design, and I'm showing him you're meant to do these things, right? And with that information, he doesn't have to use it right now, but it's more like as these things start to happen, these experiences, these encounters, he can go, oh, okay, I know why that happened, or I know why that person was brought to me, or I know the purpose of this experience is going to teach me this for what I'm supposed to be doing, if that makes sense.
Well, what makes sense is that what we're really trying to tell the audience is this is not a platform that's to tell a kid what they can and can't do because of human design. We're just telling them what they're capable of based on said human design, right?
Yes.
What you're capable of doing, and telling someone what you can and can't do because you fit this certain type of design, right? Is would be very, very disingenuous and lazy on some people's part, and that's not what I swear to God, that's not what we're doing here.
It's the opposite.
We're doing the opposite. We're doing the opposite. Like, look, I struck you. You had my personality down to a T, and the drawback and the implosion of that is, I'm always in a situation where I have people around me, but I'm always alone. I'm always by myself. I always feel like I'm by myself.
Yep.
Starbucks was probably invented for people like me. I like and I'm used to having people around me, but don't talk to me. So. There are these many aspects that generate interest and help you understand yourself better. And that's what I think it's designed to do. I think it's designed, guys, it's just designed to help you understand yourself. And nobody's telling you what you're going to be. And then volleyball and as coaches, especially in the junior scene, on the junior scene, we ain't trying to tell people what you can and can't do.
So on that note, I was talking to my sister who happens to also be a projector, and I was telling her about this, and because projectors are supposed to show you an easier, more efficient path, right? So I'm trying to show this to my sister, who's also a projector. So I'm like, come with me.
That's why you're so good at it, dude.
And she says to me, well, why would you want to know ahead of time what you're supposed to do? Why wouldn't you want to just experience it and try it? It's not about telling you what you can or can't do. It's not about telling you what to do. It's about giving you kind of a treasure map, a roadmap of things to try and experiment with. Yeah. And if it aligns and it feels good, then you keep doing it. And if it doesn't, then you don't. Mm-hmm. But as a coach, how powerful is it to be able to look at your team of 14 kids with their human design charts and be like, oh, that kid's going to be a great communicator. So I'm going to show that strength to them, and I'm going to make that grow. Or this kid's got energy to just lead because they have a positive attitude and a work ethic like none other. I'm going to empower them to lead from that strength because they're going to build confidence. The team is going to appreciate them. Right. So and then we can identify some of those open areas and go, okay, this is a place that you're potentially susceptible to conditioning or whatever. So we're going to call awareness to that.
Right. And it also helps you communicate with your players, right? Like if there's a player that's talking too much and being a control freak, right? It is the coach's animal impulse to say, hey, you're not in charge here. Sit down, shut up, right?
Right.
But if you understand the what they're doing, you approach them a different way. It's like, hey, look, you're a leader. I get that.
Yes.
Let me take it from here a little bit. And I'm not trying to tell you, I'm not trying to stop you from being yourself. So, so it's a useful tool, guys, for coaches to understand how to talk to your players. Because you understand how you talk to your players, how to talk to their players, there will be a general respect, regardless of your knowledge as a coach, that comes where they'll follow you through the fire, right? Because trust me, when I started coaching girls, they did everything I asked and they still sucked, right? So right, but and that's cool because now you get to address yourself. That was the beginning of my coaching career, and that was only women. The men. We took off right away, but it took me, like I've been coaching since 98. My first coaching gig, I was an assistant coach at City Tech,
Wow.
building their program from the ground up. Well,
So
98
fun.
junior college, but 99 NCAA men's. And we were grandfathered in the tournament eligibility because men's volleyball has a grandfather clause. So we took off right away. But the women, they were inspired by the men, and they're like, this guy's gonna make us good. And they ended up being good individually, but we weren't winning, you know. And
sometimes that happens.
Yeah, it took probably year 8.
Really?
Like, however the math works out, 98 to the present, that's 18. I don't know. How many years is that? 26, 24? I don't know. You guys tell me at home. Tell me how to count.
Yeah, where's the comments?
Math is hard, man. Math is
Math
hard.
is not mathing.
But it took me to like year 8
wow.
to kind of get that, right? And this, I mean, the reason why I walk around and thump my chest like I'm an expert is not because I came in knowing it all. It's because I made so many stupid mistakes. And ask any psychiatrist, psychologist, doctor, coach that your memory retention is better from actively making the mistake and self-correcting.
Yep.
You have a better memory retention. I'm not saying go out there and look for the first mistakes to find, but which is why I use the Chekhovian technique when I'm coaching my kids, because it allows them to self-correct. Right.
100%.
Because I mean, it's a generation why, right? Like when we were kids, and the coach asked you to do something, you ask the coach why. Go ahead and ask the coach why. I dare you.
Run.
Right? Yeah.
You're running.
Why? Why ain't in your vocabulary? But so if we want these kids and we want to teach these kids to ask why because it makes them better players and understanding the why, let's explore different techniques and styles of coaching. Be true. If that's what you're saying, be true, be who you are. Right. So
hold on. I want to go back,
please,
just on how to talk to your athletes as an example.
Please. Yeah.
So,
hold on. I'm getting a popcorn and Diet Pepsi for this one.
On my 13s team, I have some of their human designs, not all of them. And one kid, for example, is a projector. And so early in the season, projectors are supposed to help guide, right? And often they see things that other people don't. So she's telling other people where to go because we're learning rotations, but she doesn't know where she's supposed to be, right? And so at one point, this was going on for like a practice or two, and I pulled her aside and I said, look, I know that you're trying to be helpful, and I know that you're a leader, but I can't have you telling people where to be when you don't know where you are. So I need you to know where you are first and know that 100%. And once you know that and your street is clean, then you can start telling your teammates where to go and be stepping into that leader.
They might make a good coach someday.
100%. Right? But
if they don't know where they are on the court, they might be a good coach someday because they're not going to be on the court anymore. So think about it that way.
Right. But also, but knowing that about her allows me to handle that a little different than just saying like, hey, I don't need you telling people what to do. Mm-hmm. Right. And to how we talk to our athletes, there are certain ways to ask questions or give information based on energy type alone that also elicit more positive. Like generators, they need yes or no questions. If you ask them an open-ended question, it takes them a while to get there. But because the generators have that sacral energy, that gut response, you ask them a yes or no, and you'll know right away. Like whether they go, or yes or no, you know what they feel as long as you are paying attention to the response that they give you, right? Or manifesting generators like yourself, you like a lot of options, but you like to know the options ahead of time. So do you want Italian, Chinese, or Mexican food for dinner? And then you'll probably know what that is, what you want based on those options. It
makes relationships horrible because that's the only argument you're going to have, man. Which, by the way, is a good life, right? If you're having stupid fights over what you want for dinner, man, you're probably your life doesn't suck. But
no,
the magic question is, what are you doing for dinner? Or like when she says she knows what she's doing, I'm standing up like Drake, shaking my hand, just. You know how that GIF of Drake just shaking his head, stands up or whatever.
Oh my God! Yes,
and it's captioned that moment where she actually says she knows what she wants for dinner. Just
that's it.
Like Paula Abdul when she ran out of words for American. Yeah, well, I just love the, and if you did.
Just that's it. Just no words necessary.
Just clap.
So good.
With that being said, an ACC as coaches that defer to something as beautiful as human design, right? Growth mindset, like chop wood, carry water was a required reading at LMU.
Okay.
Still is. It's about somebody's journey to becoming a great samurai warrior. And chop wood, carry water is basically this getting up in the morning and having this discipline of a certain task that has to be done. And the more you do it in repetition, the less you feel a certain way about it. Like I don't want to do this today, or do I want to do it? It becomes less and less. It becomes less significant than the mission itself. Mm-hmm. So that's chop wood, carry water. I'll give you guys the author. You guys could just look it up. But for LMU, it's required reading. And I'm like, John, I'm not reading this. You're insane. And I ended up reading it after I left, and I was like, okay, probably could have done a better job with him if I read that, But I'm like, you guys make sure you hand in that report tomorrow, right? So whether you're doing something like that or whether you're doing this, there are certain rules, and this. Thank God I got Ashley. Don't forget to smash that like button for everybody listening, right? Helps with the algorithm.
Yes,
it
please.
It really does. So there's rules as coaches that we. And I really hate being like the teacher and talking like up here or whatever, but read the material. Rule number one, read the material in its entirety before you implement it in practice. If someone has a new study about dynamics or body mechanics or plyometrics and all that stuff, don't just go by somebody else's word and say they're good. They know they played the sport, so therefore they're right. Read the study. Because even if you agree with them, you have to know what you're teaching. Yep. Rule number 2, read the variables in the study. The variables meaning, was this study on sports or just people? And if it wasn't a sport, was it my sport or was it tennis? And if it is my sport, was it juniors or adults? And if it was juniors, is it boys or girls, right? And if it's boys or girls, was it 18s or 12s, right? And if it's 18s, was it... was the study done in 2 weeks, 3 days, or a month? What's the sample size?
Right.
Don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. Okay? For reasons that I will get into my other rules. Rule number 3, never proceed or conclude with any training, discussion, or debate if you do not understand or if you disagree with the given circumstances. There are so many debates where, like, you and I talk about politics a lot, and someone will start the debate, well, let's start here. It's the fact that this is this, right? So let's move on. So if you don't agree with that, they're giving you these given circumstances to set up the argument that are not actually given circumstances. Like, they're setting up givens that are not given. Right. Then the rest of the debate and discussion, or even training, if you dare, is fruit from a poisonous tree.
Yes.
And nothing good comes from that. It just continues to rot, and you don't know why. And it's because you might have accepted a set of given circumstances that are not given, or a set of absolutes that are not so absolute. All right. Which leads me to my last thing. Start trusting yourself as the expert. Obey these 3 rules, right? And rule number 4 is believe in yourself as an expert. All right. Take whatever you know and have some confidence in yourself for 2 seconds, because at the end of the day, what scientists are doing are literally, not, and sometimes figuratively or sometimes literally, throwing crap to a wall, see if it sticks, taking notes. Doing it again, taking notes. And the longer you've been doing that, and the more notes you have in your journal, the more you are part of a very important experiment and the bigger experiment. Yeah. Trust yourself. I told Dane Blanton, who was on the podcast, sometimes you just have to accept the real scientists here are the coaches.
100%.
And Dane was dismissive. He's like, oh, like, you mean like throw crap to a wall and see what sticks? I'm like, yes.
Exactly.
4-time champ, man. I said, Dane, don't you pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. right? He's only known victory since he's been a head coach, and he was mocking it, but I'll bet you $100 he left, right? And again, Dane's a great example because the people on the outside are like, who does this guy thinks he is talking to Dane? Dane is a guy who became successful by listening to people like us.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, I'm not going to go with that one. Appreciate it, but interesting. In fact, that's in my practice plan next week, right? That's what makes Dane and guys like that a great coach. And now they start becoming the measuring stick in which all coaches compare themselves, but without knowing what the conversations that we're having right now, and without allowing you put yourself in a position to disagree or agree.
Yeah.
What's the point? Right? We have fixed mindset and growth mindset, right? That's been like the biggest discussion. And it's been a very popular premise that growth mindset is always going to be better than fixed mindset. And I don't argue against that. But treating fixed mindset like it's taboo is also criminal. Understanding how a procedure goes where you feel less of a way about it allows you to perform.
Yeah.
And what makes me qualified? My degree in theater performance makes me qualified to talk about that. Because when you're in theater and you're hired to do 50 shows, and if your boyfriend dumped you that day, the audience doesn't care. They paid their ticket to watch you perform.
Right.
And so much is similar to volleyball. At the end of the day, and that's where the generator, like Bill Parcells, a generator mentality. Either you can do it or you cannot. Mm-hmm. That's a yes or no question. That's not my generator thing, even though you can't have this generator without that.
Correct.
Right? You can't spell elite without Eli, right? So Eli Manning. So I don't want to drive us off the cliff, but I think what I'm trying to say is listen to everybody. Listen to everybody because you never know what you're going to learn from it. And two, don't be dismissive of people who lack the experience of someone you consider famous, right? And I'll land on this because your wheels are turning. Just because you see where someone's standing does not mean you know how they got there. That's very important. And I'll end with that.
So, okay, I'm going to keep tying in some human design stuff as we keep going.
Yeah.
So
That's the whole purpose of this podcast. It's why you're here. I really wanted to get into it.
Perfect. I appreciate that. So there is this aspect of human design called profile lines. And the numbers are 1 through 6. And they all mean different things. But most of it's going to show you how you learn and then what the world wants from you. You and I both share profile line 4, which is called the opportunist.
Opportunist.
Which means...
I read that, guys. I know that.
You read that. That's 4, and we both have it in our subconscious, which means we have a subconscious tendency to rely on networking to put us in positions or situations that we need to be in. And we also learn from watching others around us. So as you just talked there, you're like, listen to other people, learn from other people, figure out what you do or don't do based on what you're seeing other people do and how they work. I'm the same way. I talk all the time with my athletes. When you're in practice, if you're doing practice right for 2 hours, you should be emotionally, mentally, physically exhausted when you go home, because you are so intentional and focused on watching and learning and listening from everything going on around you. It's not just you that you're learning from.
That's why you only want to work 3 hours, dude.
Right.
Because I can be efficient. 3 hours of exhaustion.
Yes. Thank you for seeing me. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly
Someone
it.
come up to you after you coach a practice. Actually, how come you don't work more hours? If they said that after you came from practice, you'd be like, dude, go fly a kite.
Because I put my all into those 4 hours. I have 2 back-to-back, teams, and I put my all into that. I'm interacting with the kids. I'm connecting with them. I'm showing them what they need to do now, what's going to be important later. And it takes effort, right? Like, coaches should be tired too. And the other point I want to make is I love those points. And I want to say also, as a coach, I think it's really important to take in all the information, but then also have a grounding and understanding of why you use things and when you use them, right? There's a lot of coaches, like everyone's got their niche out there right now. We've got people working, putting content out there for Division I athletes, people putting content out there for rest and relaxation, people putting human design, whatever the case is. And all of it has its purpose based on your athlete or the environment. But like, I'm not going to take a developmental team and treat them like I'm training Division I athletes, because I'm not. At 13, I'm definitely not. I'm worried about giving them the foundational technical tools,
Yep.
resilience mindset, growth mindset. How are we going to get the most out of you and teach you how to continue to improve, and the self-correct thing you've said too, that's another thing. Like, I get kids in private lessons. My goal is not to keep them coming back. Like, I'm not a bad doctor. Okay. I don't want them to keep having issues and come back. I want them to come back because they want to keep getting better. I want them to come back because they need some sort of Ashley in their life. But when I'm in my lessons, I'm telling them like, hey, if this or this happens, your correction is likely that. Right? So if the ball's spinning as you said it, thumbs closer, it's probably because your thumbs are too wide, right? Or you're finishing with Edward scissor hands versus flat hands, or ball shaped. And so I think coaches are getting inundated with content right now, ways to do things different, technical advancements, all these things. But then also the athletes are getting bombarded with they're like, oh my God, this new shiny technique on Instagram. And it's like, okay, how many times are you going to need to be able to open hand scoop the ball in a Division V girls match?
Right.
Maybe once in a 3-set match. So am I going to spend 15 minutes practicing that and going through that motion? No.
Maybe the entire season.
Right. I'm going to spend 5 minutes on it, and I'm going to say, hey, instead of going with your fist, open your hand and bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And I'm going to say, try it next time that happens, and that we're not going to practice it, because I know it's only going to be used one out of however many points that is in a 3-set match. And the other stuff's more important. Passing, setting, out of system hitting, right?
Well, if you're talking about juniors, there is a huge value in private lessons too, right? For the people that don't understand the junior scene, right? And basketball coaches and players, parents of kids get this. They do get this. Private lessons outside of practice, where you want to do that like 150 times because you want to and because you're paying for it, right?
Right.
Is definitely going to make you a better athlete. And the things you're learning in practice, you don't. It's weird because you don't conquer certain techniques in practice. You conquer the learning part of it and the learning curve of it, right? Like,
And the group
I'll just
stuff.
keep it simple. If someone's teaching you a 3-step approach, I'm a 4-step guy,
Me
but
too.
a lot of people are 3 steps, right? They don't go into a tournament with what you call the perfect approach because they learned it in practice. They got it because they learned it in practice and because they practiced what they learned.
Outside
Right.
of practice.
You got
Yes.
kids going from classroom to classroom. They might from math class to science. They might do half of that journey from door to door, the 3-step vertical. They might do it at home. The fingerprints on the ceiling didn't come from aliens or like ghosts in your house. Your house isn't haunted. That came from your kids. Okay. Practicing the 4-step approach. So
And they're doing it good.
So I was just one at the top of what you're saying. I don't devalue the importance of learning something that you won't use, but I will say that that's more of we learned it in practice, and because they want to try it more, that's a private lesson thing.
Yep.
And I know everyone's like, oh, these coaches, oh my God, more money, but I'm telling you. We can have a whole conversation. We can have a whole conversation about what your kid wants and what you want for your kid and what coaches want, right? That's a 3-way conversation.
It's a triangle.
But the foundation of that triangle is private lessons. And I'll leave that alone. But most of you know what I'm talking about here.
Well, we talked early. I said, in a team environment, the group's at the top, the individuals in the middle, and the coaches at the bottom, right? And so, in my opinion, I've been coaching club teams for 18 years, club or private lessons for about 4 now since 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the biggest gaps in club coaching across the board
Mm-hmm.
is that I don't know if enough coaches are capable of servicing the individual within the team climate. The amount of times I hear parents say, "Oh, they don't work on this at practice." It's like, well, that's a two-edged sword, because a coach can't just take one kid aside for 10 minutes when they've got 13 other kids that need to get better and working on a team culture.
Right.
Versus being like, "Hey, you need to get better at these things. You need to go get a private lesson so that you can work on these things to get better." I think both are important. But again, as a parent and athlete, you have to know what your goals are and what you're after. And coaches, I think, can do a better job. Like, one of the things I do is I've gone away from it recently because I talk to them all the time. But within the first 15 minutes of a practice, I highly recommend like having a one-on-one conversation as you walk around the gym while they're warming up their arms and peppering, right? Like, "Hey, we're still focusing on this for you today." Or,
Right.
what do you think you need to work on today, right? That conversation can be different based on who you're talking to,
Right.
but give them something to be thinking about, because if they're just like willy-nilly going through practice, the kids are going to go through the motions unless you teach them how to approach practice to prepare.
Look, earlier on you were talking about kids were overloaded with too much information, but it's because sometimes, with the internet notwithstanding, it's because the coaches are taking this overload, and they have this desperate need to feel like they're doing their job, right? And and the reason why, and I'm going to sound like I'm totally contradicting myself on telling coaches to trust themselves as experts. You're going to trust yourself less as experts if you're having an overload of information you're trying to disseminate to your kids, and you don't have the full grasp, and you didn't do your homework on that, right?
Yep.
So you're going to have, and again, it's going to be fruit from a poisonous tree.
Yep.
Right. Your kids are only going to be limited, for the most part. They're going to be limited to what you've learned about that and this and that.
Right.
Unless you just have this bright kid, or unless you have a certain technique in your experiment, this great experiment we call coaching, where you got a discovery in practice because of how a kid's certain personality reacts to what you just gave them.
Correct.
The personalities you were talking
Yep.
about, the what I call character armor, and how they
Yep.
build that. And there's this really cool thing we talked about before, right? You and I had this great conversation, and we're still footnoting a team and design. Don't
Don't
get
We're
that twisted,
good.
guys.
Keep going.
We asked ourselves, and Wendy was with us because Wendy's the mom of the volleyball.
Yeah.
I mean, we need you guys. If you ever look over a woman that could just spout out volleyball players, if Wendy's still fertile, she's
Oh my
she's
gosh,
got
stop.
right. Come on, like the youngest kid is like 6'8", right? Lucas, just played at Stanford. The other daughter played for Hector, Texas Christian beach volleyball team, TCU, which
Yep.
right now is like the number 2 or 3 seed. We asked, and we got a good laugh out of this, how much of volleyball is physical plus mental, right? And we were at dinner, we went in, and I said, if you ask any coach, right? And I went across, I said, what percentage would they say is mental, right? And some coaches would be like, 60-40. Some would be like 80. And some coaches would be melodramatic. 99.9. It's all mental, right? It's all mental.
Right.
But as a given, before I go on, we both agree that most coaches will say more than 50% is mental.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Are we good with that?
Yep.
All right, cool. Now moving on. Here's the second question. How much of that do you teach in practice? Crickets. You know why? Look, if they have to think about the answer, you don't want to hear the answer because they're lying.
Yeah.
Because they're making up something, or they're thinking about it and they're just going to come clean and say, hey, not as much as I'd like to. Or if they're really honest, probably
Right.
0.
Yeah. Yeah. And where do we expect them to learn if you're not teaching them?
And it's so bizarre, and it's the reason why people are probably yelling at me in the beginning of this podcast. Coach, trust yourselves as experts. No, right? And again, it sounds like I'm contradicting myself because there's so much evidence the other way
Yeah.
No, but to me, it's challenging coaches. We want to be considered. Don't say you don't want to be considered an expert. Don't act like we're even the most humble person. Don't act like you don't want people to think you're an expert at your job. All right?
All I want, I don't need you to think I'm an expert,
Oh, the hell with that.
but
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I need you to trust that I've been in the sport long enough and stop asking me why I do everything the way that I do it and just kind of trust. That's like, to me, that's what it comes down to. Because, when I've been coaching since I was 18 years old, right? So for probably the first decade of coaching, people looked at me like, oh, she's too young. She doesn't know what she's doing. And it's like, no, actually, I know a lot about what I'm doing. Yes, I'm young, but I'm extremely intuitive. And I've been paying attention on the sidelines and learning from coaches and players alike since I started playing, right? Because I've always been behind the learning curve. I started playing volleyball the summer before my freshman year of high school. So I was always like trying to learn.
You're kind of like Jason Kidding it.
Yes,
Yeah.
trying to get better to keep up. And then finally I was able to get where I wanted to in college. But all that to say, it's important for us to teach the things, especially that we didn't get, right? So we were having the conversation about the why earlier, right? I was that kid that asked why. And it wasn't because I was trying to be disrespectful. It was that I really wanted to understand the reasoning behind why we did something a certain way or why it worked that way. And now as a coach, I lean toward explaining the why right away. Like I regurgitate that just as much as I give instruction for a drill. And just recently, actually, we've been teaching my 13s rotations for however many months, 4 months. It's the Lord's work, I swear to God, at 12s, 13s,
It
14s.
is the Lord's work.
And so finally I got to the point a couple weeks ago where I go, okay, girls, I know that you want to understand the why, but I need you to forget the why. I just need you to go straight old school. I need you to know row 1 means you stand here. Row 2 means you stand here. Row 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. And the why will come later. But right now, you guys are stuck on the why, and I need you to just know the what.
Can you appreciate the strength and the weakness of the generation Y?
Yes.
Their strength is when they understand why they're more productive. The weakness is when they understand why they're more productive. Meaning when, right? Meaning when they don't, there's this whatever. And I'm actually going to go in a closet. I'm going to show you because I was coaching Evolution recently, their developmental team, and this ever evolving club, hence the term Evolution, And when you said teaching rotation is the Lord's work, it is
the Lord's work, Jesus.
Look, it's the Lord's work because for the people that follow my podcast for other reasons than volleyball, rotation is something that is so difficult to learn and seems so complicated. But at the same time, once you do, you can't unlearn it.
No,
like. The traditional rotation for side out, serve, receive, and switches on offense, it stays with you forever. Yep. And the reason why I'm looking in my closet is because
what do you have in there?
I'm going to show you something. Hold on, guys. Stay with me.
Is it a rotation cheat sheet?
No, it's something a little bit better.
Better?
It's better. So I'm back, guys.
Oh gosh, I cannot wait.
For the audio people, okay, it is what it is. You didn't see any of that. And for the video people, we'll just all agree nothing to see here. But there is something to see here. These are boxes that I put on the floor.
To stand in their spots.
Yes. So what I would do for row 1, the assistant coaches and some of the kids that know, I have them switch the boxes and I put them on the floor. And what you're supposed to do is put your 2 feet behind the boxes.
Okay.
So row 1, the kids that knew it would switch the boxes, and the other kids who were learning the rotation, boom. And we would rotate twice.
Right.
Two or 3 times. And they still don't get it, but it helps.
Right.
So the first procedure is you do this, right? Second, now that they want to learn this, you send them a YouTube video on what it looks like. And Coach Donnie, Asian guy, it's kind of Chinese 9-man guy, but is like the master of useful information. So start with this, because in this generation of videos, they just watch 3 seconds and then they can unplug. But this gains their attention,
Right.
and they'll want to do it. And then from here, any 3-minute video out there, they'll watch the rotation. And again, coaches, this ain't something they're gonna come back to practice where they're like, Coach, I got it 100%. No, this is up in the morning. It's pride swallowing. It's a siege, and it's as us, we will never fully tell stories about. We just can't.
No, and then not only will they not just magically wake up and come to practice, but you'll be at a tournament where like the first match they crush it and they know exactly where to go, and then by the second match they've lost their minds.
And what do people do without Rose?
I don't know.
What do people do without Rose? As an international player and as an East Coast player, we never. I came to California. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Are we in row? Do we start in row one, coach? I'm like,
what's row one?
I'm like, what's your position? Setter. I'm like, I need you in position one. He's like, so that's row one, and I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah,
It's row one.
I hear you.
Because one, as international players, we didn't start in row one because statistically, even though it's 3 front row hitters, right?
It's not a good rotation.
It's the most difficult, statistically, the most difficult rotation to side out from.
Yep.
Even though it's 3 front row hitters and your OH1 should be a mismatch out there, right? And 2, the reason why a lot of us didn't know is because we didn't base our offense just on who was front row or back row, right? I was in the middle of the volleyball evolution where everybody was hitting everywhere. So, so I didn't get row one and the rows until I moved to California. Kevin Barnett, by the way, was really, really good at like one of the NCAA games, really good at just explaining. He's like, some of you out there probably don't get that. And he does listen. It's weird. He does listen to the podcast because when I was talking about rows, he a week later, he's talking about that. Right. So, it made me think he was actually listening because I tease him a lot and it sounds like a crap on him about his beach commentary. But don't get it twisted, man. Indoor, there's not a better guy that takes you on this journey that gets you to care about the characters. And he's our modern day Chris Marlowe and Paul Sunderland for indoor. He really is. And his mom's a voice coach. And again, just because you see where someone stands doesn't mean you know how he got there.
Right.
Imagine that guy's journey, right?
Yeah.
Never mind his Olympic whatever, right? Australia, that was a nightmare. They lost every single match, right? But beating Greece in Athens, Kevin Burnett was part of that. So never mind the player, but like what he shaped, and I'm going off on a tangent, but what shaped who he is now, and I told him to his face too, because I don't like saying things behind people's back and pretending to be their friend. I'm like, I want to let you know I said some funny, some funny things about your beach, and he's like, hey, and I'm like, nah, better that comes from me here, but it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean I don't respect you. It's volleyball. I'm trying to, as it's my job to criticize volleyball with volleyball.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm a little cold, my satire's a little cold, and I'm not sure where we're going with that because I wanted to jump back to human design. How does human design, like in these personalities, are all of them leadership flexible? Or do some of these people make the best, some of these personalities make better leaders?
100%. So again, human design is meant to show you like a self-awareness picture of who you are and what kind of comes natural to you or how things will come to you. But yes, there are things within the chart that that can lead to you being a more effective or powerful leader than others. Some examples of that, like I actually wrote a blog a couple months ago. Maybe I'll have to put that link in the chat, but having a defined throat, meaning you have energy from within your throat.
Which can be trained.
Which it can be trained. And actually I find it very powerful. The undefined throat is actually even more powerful because when that undefined throat wants to speak, it's because it's being called out from something in the environment, right? So it carries a little more weight. But having a consistent energy through the throat, a lot of times having energy, the sacral energy helps you become a leader because you have that, you can just go, right? You can show how to go. Projectors make good leaders because we see things that other people don't and we're supposed to guide. There's always the question of the ego, the heart center. That's your self-worth, confidence, and willpower.
Well, third and fourth, yeah.
You have a defined ego. I have an undefined ego. So, I have through my life done more work to try to prove myself versus just having confidence in that I am who I am,
It's
right?
fourth and fifth.
Yeah. And so for me, it's like I've kind of had to unlearn that conditioning and be like, no, I don't have to do more to prove my worth. I am worthy. I am myself, regardless if I work 20 hours or 3 hours. There are,
It's a badass 3 hours, though. It
yes,
is, you know,
so
anyone that's
badass.
never coached, man, guys, what a 3 hours, right? Come on. You have NBA guys that are resting for load management for a 60-second game. So
Yeah.
if you can understand that, you have to understand coaching and,
An-
and how it takes that out. Sorry.
No, it's good. Another area is like the emotional center, right? So I have an undefined emotional center, which means I take in and absorb and amplify all the emotions around me. So again, that's something that allows me to tap into emotional stability or experiences other people are having. Like I know people are having a bad day before they can even tell me they're having a bad day, right? And I'll say, hey, how are you? And they'll be like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, whatever. And I'll be like, okay, I see you and I'm here for you if or when you want to talk.
Now, here's a cool story about the throat thing, right? I was someone that was born with it and it was instilled with it, but has always been imploded. So
Yes.
I was imploded by broken hearts, and broken hearts leads to the fifth chakra, where you don't know if you're hearing the truth or lies, right?
Yep.
So there's kind of a domino effect that happens between the fourth and the fifth in your life. And guys, for anyone still sticking with us about these chakra things, thank you, because I think some of you might still be confused, but some of you are learning something today, and that was the whole purpose of this podcast. But I'm in acting one class, right? And I'm speaking like a regular person, but there's a bit of a control freakiness where I don't want to scare anybody, right? Like
Yeah.
by really being the character. So they had this mat drill, and this very skilled professor, his name is David Mold, had me lay on the ground, and I had a monologue. And the whole time I'm talking about the monologues, he's kind of like fixing things. So he's fixing something on my neck, shoulders, and he goes back to my neck. And he does this final adjustment to my neck, and then my voice changes. And the way my voice changed, I didn't really feel it as much. I felt like it was my voice and speech was, the clarity was more whatever, and it came more from here, right?
Right. Like deep.
Yeah, and it was deep, but deep, like old as the stars deep, not deep voice deep, but like from the diaphragm. And when I was done with my monologue, it's a 12-person class. The other 11 kids were just like frozen and like shocked, like they've never stayed like. And then he's like, anybody want to say anything about this? And all of them raised their hands. One girl was close to me, he's like, me first. And they were just saying like it felt like something godly took over the room, like and for those of you that feel like your voice isn't being heard, and because your voice is suppressed, and it makes you less interested in being heard because of some fear, I will only say this: your deepest fear is not that you're inadequate. Your deepest fear is that you might be too powerful for some people to handle. And
we are.
And my ego identity speaking from this, I'm allowing myself to, because I'm trying to get to a greater point. The entire room was shocked. It was intimidation, it was love, it was feeling, it was a little bit of fear because they weren't sure where it was going to go, but it was a way he shaped my voice and opened my throat in a way where allows you to whisper on stage and the people in the back can hear you. And of course, in conjunction with theater performance, and if you're learning theater, that's what you're supposed to teach, right? He ain't taking credit for her because of him. That's his job, right? That's like saying, I'll take care of my kids. No, you're supposed to take care of your kids, dummy, right? So he's like, but for me, to feel it a little bit, and like when my monologue was over, to watch everybody else in the room, they had, I can't describe it. They just had this look like I can never look at this guy the same way ever again. It was, and it's not my ego identity because I'm not saying this is a good thing, guys. All right, it might be something else that might scare them, or you know, but it was a moment in my that I've never felt before, and no, I know how to do it. I've never felt that way again because when you know how to do it, it's normal now.
And
right?
I bet those people, those other kids that were in that class with you, remember that moment too. And for those out there listening that's still with us, like human design is a little bit woo-woo-esque on the surface, and it is bringing the energetic world to athletes, right? To the athletics. We spend so much time up here, right? But if we felt more into our bodies, I feel like we would find more ease on choices of partners or teams, or whether this environment is right for you, alignment, authenticity, right? Everybody's out there. We want to be connected. We want to have friends and people, but then we're afraid of being ourselves. So that experience, you were called out when you weren't even ready to. Like, this energy came out of you and you didn't have any control. So of course it hits you, and you remember that because it was powerful.
And it created a spike in my coaching technique. Everyone that's ever played the game before, hypothetically can coach, right?
Yeah.
And their ego identity also permits them to think just because they played the game, they can probably coach better than people that don't coach the game, which we all, with any coach historically, there's just too much historical context to just say you're full of crap.
Yeah.
Right?
Just because you're a good player.
I'm sorry. If I want to learn about basketball, do I have a conversation with Jeff Van Gundy? Or do I have a coach with Magic Johnson? The answer is both. But if I want to learn about coaching basketball, I'm going to go to the guy who never played in the NBA but can wipe the floor with Magic Johnson, who already tried to coach.
Yeah.
All the money in the world, trying to coach the Lakers, right?
Yep.
And the catbird seat as far as opportunities, couldn't get it done.
Yep.
Jeff Van Gundy comes in as the 8th seed, makes the finals, right? And Madison Square Garden, before he makes the finals, because you're up by 11 and the countdown comes and the crowd feels it. Madison Square Garden is chanting Jeff Van Gundy, a sport that is driven by the players and not the coaches, because between a player and a coach, the coach is gonna go.
Right.
You're in Madison Square Garden, the mecca of basketball, and they're chanting Jeff Van Gundy. That's the guy I want to talk to. And I went too long on the why on that. But the point I was trying to make was in New York, and we spoke to Colin Henry and we spoke to other coaches, Patrick Dietz. We didn't have real coaching out there. We got shoved into these assistant coaching positions, head coaching positions, without proper, like you said, without the proper videos or
without
whatever.
Training.
We know the X's and O's, and we can teach you how to play. And it seemed like some of the people that became better coaches faster were the setters because they knew offense, right? But and the liberos. Yeah. But it's so strange to take that leap, and then when you learn how to coach. That's the point I was trying to make, and that took way too long to get there. When you know the game and you want to coach, but you can't, and when you learn how to coach, that's when you start trusting yourself, and that's when you start understanding the human psychology around you.
Yep.
I've been in volleyball games where I got a red card, right? Mm-hmm. And when I got the red card, I knew that we were going to win. I knew the red card. There was volleyball. Yeah. Look, NCAA before it was up to 25, and men's was up to 30, right? So there was a X amount of years where it was up to 30, and the women's was 25. I got a red card, which gave the other team 28, and they were up 2-1, and we ended up winning the set and winning the match. And and this is why I'm like, don't always refer to some study, something that's on paper, because there's nothing on paper that supports why I knew we were going to win.
Yep. Well, and you get to a point there. How many times as an indoor coach have you made one sub One sub. You're up by 10 points. You make one sub.
That
That
kid,
kid,
10-point lead.
that kid doesn't even have to touch the ball necessarily, but you lose the lead.
Wild.
How does that happen?
Wild.
Like,
Wild.
how? Like, literally all you have to do is get a 2-to-1 ratio to win the set, and somehow we're tied at 23 all, and we're shaking in our boots. Why do we make that decision?
Coaches out there, how many times have you been up 21-10 and you're like, this is a good time to just get some of my guys in and get some reps. And now all of a sudden you're only up 23. Now you're only up to 23-21. And you're like, let me put my other guys in the win. And now it's 23-24. And you, us as even us who consider ourselves experts, I do. What the
Dumbfounded. Yeah, how? I've been bamboozled. Like, but I think human design can show you that. What piece did you pull off? And what piece did you put on?
That's wild. And that's got to be probably, there's a lot of interesting stuff we talked about.
Yes.
But as far as an interesting thing we stumbled upon that creates this heightened emotional response, people watching this podcast are feeling a different way about that, because you can't tell me that you haven't been coaching long enough where you've been in that situation. And and
it happens all the time.
And it's weird because as you become more experienced, you don't ask what the heck just happened.
Nope.
You say, I know. Yep. I see what's going on here.
I go, I wish that didn't happen.
Yes.
But it did. So here we are.
And we still do it. And just for fun, we still do it. We still do it as coaches. We still put them in, you know.
Well, you have to.
That's true.
You have to, because they show up to practice. They're a part of the team just like everybody else.
Yep.
And again, like, it's an experience for everybody. And I think you can balance it your own way. But again, so if you could tell, like, I have my entire 17s team, I have all of their human design charts.
Right.
So first thing I do when I see something I don't like or something that I've got to address, I go to their chart and I go, okay, what's in their chart that's bringing this out?
Mm-hmm.
And then what in their chart can I use to bring them back?
Right. People on the live stream, leave a comment, man. I want to know who's watching. Just say I'm here, checking in. Also, don't forget to smash that like button. But for those of you that just came, we were talking about games where you're coaching and you're up by a lot, right? And then when you want to give like 1 or 2 players like playing time, all of a sudden, and like Ashley just said, the kid doesn't even have to touch the ball to be part of the winning or losing play. You're losing all these points, and 70-80% of you don't know why. And the other 20 that knows why, we still do it anyway.
We still do it because we have to. We have to.
It's laughable.
It
is laughable.
It is. But it happens. And like, okay, so we've talked a lot about indoor. So beach, right? It's you and your partner. Why wouldn't you want to know exactly what makes them tick?
Mm-hmm.
What brings out the best in them? What motivates them? What the best environment for you guys to sleep in or exercise or practice or train, whatever. Like, there are now, I want to watch beach with a different lens. I want to get their 2 human design charts and I want to watch how the energy rides high. Or as soon as something bad happens, I can see the energy dip low or the ego start to get crushed, or it puts a whole different lens on, because here's the deal, people, like, we can logically look at the X's and O's all day, but there is still an energetic feeling and like experience that happens within the tangible things that we can correct, or the way we can train movement, or, you know, like, vibes are real, and whether you pay attention to them or not is on you. And vibes is the easy way to say it, but matters. And
it matters. Look, I was watching volleyball coaches and trainers, and someone had some kind of ridiculous study talking about why momentum doesn't exist.
No. Yes, it does.
It was, well, it's one of those things where they're like, prove me wrong. And I'm like, no.
I don't have time for that.
Like, no, it's not that. Like, we're the ones questioning the claim. right? And when you're questioning a claim of someone says it's something that doesn't exist, I'm like, you're putting pressure on them to disprove a negative, right? How do you prove something that doesn't exist, right? So it's already a trap question because they already know when they introduce the subject, they should know damn well the rules of logic dictate that the burden of proof doesn't lie with the person questioning the claim.
Nope.
But they shape the question where
Yeah.
they're the ones questioning the claim and you have to justify it.
Yep.
And I think it's very slick and it's sneaky, and it might have even been a troll, but because of the energy and because humans are not machines, and because they feel a certain way about every play or a series of plays or a series of sets or a series of matches, dictate that creates a set of circumstances where their confidence gets better, the other team's confidence isn't. Hence the term momentum.
Yes.
Right? Even in the flimsiest of terms, right? That exists. And yeah, I'm not the type of person to be dismissive of anything, but I looked at that and I said, don't piss me off.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well-
yeah, it's wild. But we had something, self-awareness, who has it, who doesn't, and how do we train it? That was one of the subject matters. And that's a question that could be related to human design or not human design, like self-awareness. How do we train it? I do know that, one, however you choose to train it, you don't get better at it by not doing it. So
100%.
So self-awareness starts with how you start practice, how you prepare for practice every day. Maybe some coaches have written on a blackboard for 20 minutes, we're doing this, we're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So being aware of your environment and how it applies to yourself through the Chekhovian technique already instills self-awareness.
Yeah.
Because my process and preparation is allow them to find out the why organically.
Right.
So I can't speak for people
Right.
who coach a different way that again, that acting coach that says you need a reason to get up and move across the room. How do they create self-awareness? They do.
Right.
And I'm not the expert at that. I'm the expert in how I do it.
Right.
So thoughts on that?
For me, the biggest thing, like I have gone through my whole life feeling really self-aware, and I'll talk about human design and self-awareness next. I'm going to say this quickly. One of the things that I do to try to foster that self-awareness in my teams is I'll take times, whether it's the beginning of practice, middle, or end, where sometimes I have them close their eyes, sometimes it's eyes open. It kind of depends on what I want to elicit from them. But I'll say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where was your intentionality during that drill? 10 being I'm locked in, 1 being like I'm out to lunch. I might as well not be here, right? And then they show me. Right. Sometimes they give the low number like I think that they should based on what I'm noticing in practice. Sometimes they give themselves a little bit more credit where I don't think credit is due. And I just, okay. All right. I see your numbers. If you guys really think that you're at an 8 or a 9 right now, I just want to know that the performance should dictate something different. If that is where you're at. If not, we need to reevaluate how honest we're being with ourselves and what intentionality in our training actually looks like, right? So it depends on what kind of awareness you want to bring to the table. Are we being awareness about how intentional we're training? Are we bring awareness to what something we're doing mechanically that we need to pay attention to? Is it something as simple as body language and posture? Like, do we need to call attention to somebody who's having a bad attitude or bad posture? And so on and so forth. Human design specifically has 3 awareness centers. There's the spleen center, which is instincts and survival, the emotional center, and then the ajna center, which is the mental processing. I have 2 of those 3 centers defined. So when I ask myself, like I literally called my mom 6 months ago or so, and I was like, Mom, because I have this conversation, because I look around and I go, why don't people have the awareness of like when they're being too loud or that they just aren't working hard or whatever? And I said, Mom, where did I learn this? And she's like, well, we kind of just, like, you kind of just had it. Like, we kind of just were like, oh, this and that. there was no teaching of it. It was like, so for human design, again, being able to look at your chart and say, okay, I have this and this defined, so I know I'm going to be able to tap into those awareness centers easy. Versus for me, the emotional center, for example, is undefined, which means for my entire life, I've been told, Ashley, you're emotional. You're emotional. Well, guess what? Party people, it's not my emotions.
No, yeah.
Right? And I've said this before on a podcast, but
it's crazy because it's been kind of your reputation, like.
Yes, and I am emotional.
And the recent or distant past, yeah.
Yeah, and just recently, I had a kid come up to me and say, Coach, like, every time I make a mistake, I look over and you look like you're pissed off. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
You actually just look pissed off.
I was
reacting to that.
Well, it was like out of left field. And I go, okay, well, are you looking at me when you're scoring points? Because I can guarantee you that I'm like smiling and clapping and like pumping fists in the air too. So whereas I have to continue to be aware of how those emotions are emoting, right? Mm-hmm. Because they see and process it different. It's also like, well, what are you being aware and paying attention to? Because I'm reacting on both sides. And what I want you to take away from when you do something bad is like, I have a reaction like, ugh, or hey, we got to keep that, whatever. And then what comes out of my mouth next? Next ball.
Right.
And literally when I say next ball, whatever that feeling or emotion that came out was, it's gone.
Right.
For me.
Yeah.
Now, if you're holding on to it, that's something we need to address and work through. But I literally go through that. I feel the feeling. I let it go. Next ball.
But those are the kind of kids and that you're trying to tell them where, how they can fix it. And they keep saying, okay, like before you finish your sentence. So,
yes.
So next ball to that person means something, just make the same mistake the same way, except harder. Except with more energy, right?
But not. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to stereotype people, but whatever stereotype as you coaches out there where that kid fits that demographic, that's up to, you fix it your way. We can tell you how because this is what we do, but we don't know the kid specifically. But I will share the joke where you don't need to be a doctor to recognize the symptoms.
Amen.
You see the symptoms and they're to be redundant, visibly omnipresent,
Yeah. So the self-awareness to me is like, it's just calling their attention to the things. Cause that's the other thing. We live in freaking virtual social media world. So how much of that is actually real awareness?
Hold that question. I want to call Brian McDermott and ask him how many privates he does a week. So guys, Brian McDermott is the founder and he's a Savage coach in Chicago.
Okay.
Right. And it's a beach coach in Chicago. He has an indoor facility called Progression Beach Volleyball. And also during the pandemic, he was the one that made national news because he was showing the Department of Health in Illinois the safety of beach volleyball, the facility and the space and all that stuff. So sorry, let's
call him.
Let's call him. Please call Brian McDermott. Let's see how. Oh, good. She didn't have an attitude about it. Sarah's like, calling Brian McDermott. Sometimes Sarah got an attitude, man.
Yeah, she kind of sassy.
First of all, I don't even know if he's going to pick up.
2 hours ahead, right? So.
Yeah, he might be at practice right now.
4:00. In a private lesson, probably.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about me and certain coaches, we have this old school thing where we don't text each other, we call.
Yeah.
And it was cool because like all of the guys that play for Marv Dunphy, the old Marv Dunphy,
so
for those of you guys that don't know, it's old school coach from Pepperdine. And he also coached in the 88 Olympics gold medal team for men, which I think is the best team ever assembled. But I want to go through a laundry list of people that played for him. You got Bob Stavertleek, like one of the best guys who taught people how to use the block. Jeff Stork, left-handed setter who I imitated. And then you got Dane Blanton, right? Dane Blanton is the only male player to have an NCAA championship as a player and coach and an AVP championship and a gold medal.
Wow.
So he's got the four-factor, which Karch doesn't even have. You got Tom Sorensen, you got Sean Rooney, right? You got John Mayer. Just this cool kids, this cool kids mentality. But all of them say Dunphy's a phone call away. He picks up. So, and they were like, that's rare. And I'm like, not to me, because of where I'm the same age.
Right. You're of
So,
that.
like you are too, right? Like if you're at your phone, like if you don't pick up, then I'm not going to text you because you're busy anyway.
Right. 100%.
No, but for the generation of people, like if it's just a quick text, like, do you want to do happy hour?
Yeah.
Cool. But
That's
I
quick.
just.
Okay. I want to pause. I have another human design insight because
Please, let's do it.
okay. So going back to profile lines, you are a 1-4. Okay. 1 is an investigator, and then the 4 is the opportunist. I'm a 2-4, which is a hermit opportunist. So those of you who watch this podcast and hear all of the facts and investigating that this guy does right here, it's because that's how you learn. You literally investigate. The way you ask questions, you're like, oh, was it this or that? And then if it was this or that, then was it that? Right? You go through, you have to find the information, you want the information, and then it makes you go out and network and then share your information and also get more. I'm a hermit. So like I have a presence on social media a little bit. I go out and do my thing, but like my expertise and my gifts, I actually develop while I'm hermiting by myself at home.
Right.
And my gifts come naturally to me, and I'm supposed to do the things that come naturally versus the things that are hard. And so I laugh with my sister. She has a 1 in her line, in her profile lines too. And she'll just investigate, like she's looking for hotels. She's looking at 5 different hotels, and I'm like literally like looking, and I'm like, okay, I want that one. Like I look for whatever the amenities I want, pool, hot tub, whatever. And I'm like, okay, that one. And she's like looking at the reviews, and she like sits on it for a while, but I don't need to investigate. I literally will be like, you do your investigation. I believe most of the things you say, if not all.
Well, I think there has to be a good faith belief.
Right.
Right? Like there are some things where people need evidence of something to carry on a conversation, but there's also something where like, what if I just go back and find you all this evidence? Is it relevant to the conversation? If I show you everything you need to know, is it a nothing burger because you didn't want to be wrong?
Right.
Where are we going? Why am I going to do all this digging? Why am I going to turn the internet upside down on hard to find information that won't mean anything to you if I find it anyway, right?
Correct.
So
correct.
So some of these dialogues, and we're not talking just volleyball, we're talking just people. You have to have a good faith belief in some things. Right?
Yes.
Unless it comes to the subject matter at hand, then we have to go evidence based. For example, if I'm having a conversation about like the JFK thing, right? Like, someone says, "What would it take for you to think that Oswald acted alone?" I'm like, convince me that someone could let off 3 shots in 7.1 seconds, with a bolt action rifle at a moving target, left to right. And hit the guy twice, with the last shot being the most accurate, right? So
Right.
So then at least from there, right, you could have a conversation, and if the conversation leads into, okay, well, a good shot can do that. Now the question shifts to, was he a good shot, right?
Right.
And his military records show he wasn't, right?
Yep.
But their source says he was. For example, CBS says he was an expert marksman.
Yep.
Which is what the media does to show people like expert marksman to the civilian is the creme de la creme, right? But expert marksman to a military person is an oxymoron, because when you qualify for a weapon, there's three
Right.
badges. One is marksman, which is the worst. Sharpshooter, meaning you hit more targets, so you're better than marksman, but you're not quite an expert. And then there's the expert. Some targets require 36 out of 40, and some of them 38 out of 40. So when someone says he's an expert marksman, they're kind of covering their tracks. Like if he is a marksman, if he's the worst shot,
They're covering it by calling him
got
an
the word
expert
in
one.
there.
Right.
Yeah, he's an expert at being regular, right? But they know that the audience is not going to think that way. They're going to think he's an expert.
Right.
and not an expert at being average.
Right, because we don't know that those are the detailed
Right.
terminology pieces that get used in that.
So you're certainly right about the investigative thing, because now, again, remember how we started this poll podcast, accepting a set of given circumstances that are not so given.
Yeah. Yes.
Versus the weight of how much it means to you.
Yeah.
If it doesn't mean a lot to you, and if it's not, and if you're just trying to use it to make the conversation move forward, like you said, there has to be this good faith. If you think I'm a good faith actor,
yeah,
you're going to
right.
trust me.
Right. And if there's something that I disagree with or that sounds funky, then I'm going to go, put that into Google or go find something to help give me a reason why that doesn't sit right. But also, like, it just lends to kind of going from your gut instinct. Like, that's where I go, okay, I'm going to call you on your BS if I think you're BSing. But I've known you long enough that, like, you have no reason to BS stuff that you're researching and investigating. Like, I think you really just want to bring information to people and a different perspective. And
the question is, when does you being armed with certain information affect your ego identity, right? Without getting into the climate that has happened from 2021 up to the present, right? First, there has to be an empathy and a forgiveness, because if you are armed with the same information that they're armed with, you might feel a certain way about that. And when people say facts don't care about your feelings, that is absolutely nuts, because things that you accept as facts affect a certain way that you feel.
Yes.
Right. And if you feel a certain way about that, and if you're armed with that, and if you're using that to redistribute and argue and debate, you're no one's going to tell me that your facts or your set of given circumstances do not cross paths with your I won't say stubbornness, but say with your ego identity.
Yes.
Right. And what happens is it creates a willful ignorance, aka stupidity.
Yeah.
Right. And that's human nature, right? That's look, we're sticking to volleyball, but that's where we are as a society. But for volleyball, in regards to our sport, I think there's a lot of application to that.
Well, you can relate it.
I mean, we're speaking in terms of our wheelhouse. We're the experts.
Yeah, and you can relate it to something as simple as when you confront a 17 or an 18-year-old player. They've been in the game for 5-6 years. They're headed off to college. Maybe they're playing, maybe they're not. But these are like young adults almost, right? Like, and so they're going to be on a certain level sense BS from us too. And that's another reason that we need to make sure that
it is that age where their detector is a little bit stronger.
Yeah. But also,
it's like sonar.
But also, if you're not being authentic or you're not being honest with them, they're going to be like, why am I going to listen to you?
Right.
But at the end of the day, part of their job as athletes and part of their parents' jobs is to find a program and a coach that's going to give them the experience and teach them the things that they want to learn or that is important for them to learn at that phase.
Right.
Right. So you may not like what I have to say to you as a player or a parent. However,
true story.
If I'm being respectful and I feel like it really is going to help you now or long term, then I'm going to have that tough conversation. And if you don't like that and it causes a rift, then that's on you.
A little bit. I mean, because there's still, if we're speaking in terms of juniors, they're still developing something we call character armor, right? They're still building their personalities in conjunction with what you were talking about with human design.
Yep.
And absent of human design, if we're just talking about someone that has a fully psychologically developed brain, they're not going to be a complete human being until they're probably 20, right? Some earlier than others, right? Give or take 3 years. And so there's that comes into play, that if they behave a certain way, it is our responsibility to, if we're able to fix that girl interrupted. I call it boy interrupted or girl interrupted. Like my human psyche was grossly interrupted by well, I want to do shocking content, but like ethical abuse, changing the word ethical abuse,
Yeah.
from my piano teacher and then from relatives in my family that affected my psychological growth. Where you want to hear something crazy, theater performance cured it.
Right.
Because in theater performance, you have to be able to look back on your past and understand your past and at least raise questions, not necessarily answers,
Right.
but questions.
Ooh, love
And once
questions.
you start asking questions, you're pretty much cured. For everybody at home, Silence of the Lambs. Right, Hannibal Lecter. For those of you that never watched Silence of the Lamb, Jodie Foster played Agent Starling, this rookie agent that had to question an imprisoned psychiatrist, and a psychiatrist who's in jail, to catch a serial killer, Buffalo Bill. It was a psychiatrist that treated the serial killer, so they're just trying to understand how he works to find out what his next move is. Now, here's the catch: the psychiatrist is a cannibal. The Hannibal, they called him Hannibal Lecter. Dr. Lecter was a cannibal and eats and has killed his prey and ate them. So he's someone that's in a cage, and they warned Agent Starling to just ask questions on the piece of paper. Do not start answering any of his questions. You do not want this man to be in your head. And
Right.
despite all the warnings, he was in her head, and what happened was he helped her catch Buffalo Bill, but he also treated her for her girl interrupted thing.
Yeah.
She had this thing where she was on a farm and they were slaughtering lambs, and she didn't want the lambs to get slaughtered. So one night she freed them, and they were all over the place. And then the uncle got mad and sent him away, ended up killing him anyway, right? But she still has nightmares, and she still hears the lamb screaming at night, and it shaped her level of carefulness and to want to be a protector, and it shaped her. It interrupted it shaped her career, but there was something that allowed her not to move on from when that happened. So sorry guys, the bottom line, the through line is Hannibal Lecter asked her. He says, "So, Clarice, do you feel like if you catch Buffalo Bill, the lambs will stop screaming?" And she goes, "I don't know." And he goes, "Thank you, Clarice." And it was a magical through line that helped me cure something we in theater call retrospective action. Retrospective action is the art of confronting your past to deal with the present and future.
Yep.
And when people say confront your past, I remind everybody watching, confronting your past doesn't mean I learned my lesson and I have all the answers. No, confront your past and find out that if this abuse, and then you going back to school and failing math and science, two things where one thing seems like on the surface have nothing to do with the other.
Right.
Are they connected? That's the question, because they might be.
Yeah.
And as a kid, it's unequivocally beyond your level of expertise to diagnose, never mind treat it, to even see it.
Yep.
And that's what parents, USA Volleyball, AAU, and the NCAA are asking us to be as coaches. They're asking us to diagnose it, to catch it. And coaching volleyball, we are either providing some of these girls interrupted with an escapism, where maybe they're kicking the can down the road and they can deal with this later, right? And there's not a whole lot we can do. We're not doctors, right? But we shape this discipline and how they could behave off the court that might make them someday see somebody about it, or we can help them.
Right.
Because we can definitely treat the symptoms.
Right. Well,
and
that's where having that conversation and being like, this is where we're at. This
is a wild conversation, by the way.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just like, as coaches, you can tell when a coach cares when they take the time sometimes to say the hard things. Like, I tell my kids and parents, there's going to be times where I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to want to hear. But in those moments, what I hope that you do feel and hear is that I care about you, that I'm there for you, and that what I'm telling you is something that's going to help you improve or get better even though it's hard hearing it right now. Like nobody likes to hear,
No.
you're not the best libero on this team.
Right.
Right? But here's the deal. You're not the best libero on this team right now, and you need to do A, B, and C to improve and make yourself a better libero.
Right.
Right? Or setter. Like, we start in rotation 1. If you can't make your serve, then I have a problem starting you because I need you to serve.
Yeah, we're not gonna put you in the game just to see if you can do it.
Right? Like I see it in practice.
Yeah.
So, and on that note, like, I say, so this is an example. So in practice, I've got kids, sometimes they foot fault in our serving drills, right?
Like all the way.
Right? And sometimes I'm like, oh God, this is annoying because I know it matters, but also like, I'm not going to stress this kid out by berating them right now about a foot fault. But then it shows up in a tournament. So then I take the opportunity. So I say something in the practice. I say, hey, you're foot faulting. You need to make sure that you're taking a smaller first and second step so that you have room to take a big, strong last 2, whatever. Tournament happens. We foot fault. Okay. I'm not even going to yell at the kid during the game. I'm going to wait till after the game and I'm going to say, look, you guys, everybody, the whole team, I say stuff to you in practice without being angry or whatever about it because it doesn't matter right then, but it matters later.
No.
Now is later. You're foot faulting in a game. That's why I said 2 months ago that I need you to fix your foot faulting in practice.
And if you have the relationship with a kid where you look at him, you be like, hey, I give you nuggies, right? And it's like something that's funny where they know you're upset, but like the way you're saying it kind of brings your eye level down here instead of like all the way up here.
Looking down.
Like me, like I do. That's one of my biggest weaknesses. I always speak from up here because I always have to feel like we're not sharing command of the room.
Right.
We don't share command in this room. This is, but that's the challenge, right? But also, as the season goes, you know what happens? You start to understand their psychology and their challenges. And you as a coach, you might do the right thing, but you might know what I'm going to say next. We're guilty and we're curious to see if they are ready or if they can overcome that challenge. For example, what you were talking about.
Yes.
I was at a few years ago, I was at a tournament, SCVA Cup or something like that, or the early season ones in December.
Yeah.
And match point at a girl missed a serve. 2 match points. We were
tough.
10-2 in the whole tournament. And we lost both games, the third set, and both of them were match point opportunities, which must have made this girl feel like the sickest human being in the world, right? Fast forward, training, whatever, just her learning how to serve and this and that. We're in the same situation. We're in this pool where we lost 1 and 2, and I'm doing a cool down, and we're ready to go home, and everybody's like, no, you have a play-in game because there's this 3-way tie. So we get this 3-way tie for third place, so we're now no longer in last. And then they're like, now you have this tiebreaker for second, 1 set. So I'm like, okay, we got to stay longer, and we have the tiebreaker for second. And now they're like, no, now you have a tie. Now you have the crossover game to be in gold.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm like, we were supposed to be on like 5 hours ago. So we get to this crossover game, which we have to do 2 of them for some reason. There was a plan for the crossover, then a crossover. That's just Red Rock making up rules as they go, right? And we go against this team that was like the number 5 seed, and we're up 14-13 again, and she's serving again. And I'm flashbacking. She missed the 2 serves, right? But then I remember the tournament after that, I put in Maddie, a girl, to serve for her, and she missed match point. So
at this point, it's a coin flip.
It was great because I wanted to see what this girl's going to do with her back to the wall. And everybody, you could see the parents, they're literally getting up.
They know.
With trying to get the circulation, so they put like their hands over their heads. Like some people do this because they're stressed, but some of it's a scientific thing, right? They got their hands over their heads. And Jason's with me, and he just goes, he wants to say something because that's what he's been doing all season until I told him to just go sit down, dude, or fire me. And this girl serves, and it stops at the top of the tape, and it's a position 4. So it's at this thing where only the most disciplined elite athlete can run it down, right? Because it's not like position 3 or 1
yeah,
where
yeah.
the middle can take it to the center. It's at 4 where everybody can do is watch it. Is which side of the net is it going to fall on? It falls on the other side and we win. And
Wow.
there's something valuable, and I like to talk a lot, but I'll leave it. I can't describe it, but there's something priceless that when she celebrates with her team, right? And her parents feel away, and there's some girls that are crying. She did. Some girls don't. Some girls they're drawing a blank.
Yeah.
But when all the celebrating happens and when everyone shakes hands, the way she looks at you as a coach and the way you look back at her, it is indescribable.
Yep.
This journey of me putting her at the service line, which defied logic, which defied sense, but at the same time was right.
Yep. Yep.
And that is the fun part about this thing we call coaching. For me, because I've been in the game so long, I probably would have felt if she missed, I probably would have felt for the most part for the same way, except that emotion that wants it for them, right? So if you feel any emotion about it, if you feel emotionally negative or just want to cry, it's not because we lost. It's because you want it for them so freaking bad. Because all the private lessons, the rejections by other clubs, being benched, you can't play this position. People saying you're not tall enough, you're not this, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
This middle blocker, you can't receive serve. Don't even put up your hands, right? All of these things lead to these little moments, these little victories and defeats. That every time you get a little victory, it's involuntary. You got to feel good about them and yourself.
Let me give you an opposite. So, because these moments matter too. A couple years ago, we were at Phoenix Festival, and my 14s team was playing for gold in the division.
With that stupid ball.
Yeah, well, whatever. I don't even know.
Remember Phoenix? There was that ball. They had a different ball. It wasn't the
I don't
Wilson.
remember.
No, but go ahead. It wasn't the blue one.
But so one of my go-to kids who had just started playing and improving at a fast rate, most potential as far as athleticism and physicality, but she made the last mistake to lose the gold medal match, and I don't remember what the mistake was, but what I do remember is looking across the court at the kid's mom as the mom was looking at the kid, and then I looked at the kid and she just looked at me and she walked over and I was like, I got you, and I wrapped my arms around her and she cried.
Of course she did.
Right? And how are
you going to say I got you? That's like making her cry, Ashley.
Well, because she wanted to.
Yes.
Right?
But you gave her a reason to.
But we're also told, don't cry, don't show emotion, da, 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 all that stuff. And I just held her and I was like, you did a great job. And that mistake that you made is not going to be the mistake you make next time.
Right.
Right? And so as coaches, we're there for them in their triumphs when they make 2 mistakes and they finally figure out how to do it right. We're also there to catch them when they fall.
Right.
And to show them like you are still loved, you are still worthy, you are still all of these things regardless of what just happened on the volleyball court.
Right. And body language wise, there's something really important. Like as your players get to know your personality, and big secret about me, everyone thinks I'm this emotional person. No, I'm a theater performer. All of my movements are
theatrical,
are performed.
Yeah.
And it's a big secret because it looks so real. Everyone thinks that's how I feel on the real, and I don't.
Yeah.
And I get critiqued on things that don't exist, and that's okay because I deserve it. I threw it out there. But
right.
There's something valuable about, like you just said, if someone gets an ace or someone misses, if your body language and your face suggest it's exactly what you expected to happen, there's value in that.
Yep.
It doesn't make someone feel completely unemotional because we're not machines, we're people.
Yep.
Right? We're machines feel that way, and you've been quite the machine lately, but you're not a machine either, right? You've been this coaching machine. You actually worked with me for an hour, which I appreciated. But there's something about body language and face language that is valuable about having the face like it's exactly what you expected.
Mm-hmm.
no, there's no surprise. I might fall to the ground if like there were 4 serves in a row. Like there's 4 in a row. I'll do a theater thing, like just kind of like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'll be like you know that Robert De Niro look like you silly bugger, like you know,
That's
or Al
my
Pacino
that's like one of my favorite
or
things
Stallone.
from the parents now is they go, my favorite's when you don't even say anything. We could just tell by the look on your face that you're about to rip them a new one. And I'm like, well, not always, but they know. Like I can look at them and be like, you know, you did that wrong. Or I can look at them and be like, it's fine. It's fine.
We got balloons. How did
Who gave us
balloons?
balloons?
Oh no, but that
Was that
worked.
us?
I don't care. I'll take it.
I'll take it.
We're talking about practice, not balloons, not a real game. But practice.
Celebrate good times. Come on.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was we did a great job. Coach's role when it comes to politics. Whatever you mean by politics, that was one of the questions. If we're talking about volleyball politics, preventive maintenance involves the onboarding meeting. The best way to do preventive maintenance, you have guidelines written, and in your onboarding meeting, it eliminates 30% of drama if certain parents mature, because they're mature parents. The mature ones, okay, it's here, it's our protocol. I'm expecting the best, but in case it doesn't go, this is what I'm prepared for, right?
Right.
So there's a value in having a whether it's Zoom or whether it's in person. I prefer in person because the
energy is different.
Yeah, the energy is significantly different. Onboarding beating takes care of a lot of the politics, right? Like playing
100%.
time, right? Like LA Volleyball Club, right? No one promises you playing time. It's a competition club. And at CVC, where you used to be at, right? And people know
Yep.
that they make a team. They know they're not going to play, but they value the practice time and the coaching, and that's why they're
Yep.
there. And someday they hope to play, right?
Yep.
Then you have Evolution, which guarantees everyone plays an entire set, which is really weird because they became a competition club, but still have that in
rule.
their policy, right? Since we have a little time, I'll share another fun story. I'm coaching 17s and I have a 15 playing 17s, and I won't give his name away, but his uncle was an Olympian, and he knew he wasn't going to get a lot of playing time, but he wanted his iron to sharpen a different way.
Yep.
So we're kind of in the silver bracket. It's the finals, right? And I'm just kind of playing everybody. I'm like, nobody cares about silver, even though I do, right?
Right. We
And-
always do.
But there's one kid, it's match point, and we're at the end of the day, we can leave winners, right? And it's 16-15, and it's match point, and there was a replay. Ref called a replay, and we'd missed the serve. So we got a break we have match point, right? So I look at the end of the bench, and I don't know what made me look, but all the way to the end of the bench is the 15 kid like this, kind of. And I said, Finley, go in and serve, right? Right? So, and the parents desperately want to win, right? Because it affects our rankings. We still move up in some way, right?
Right.
Everyone just wants to win. And I put this kid in, and he's cold. And I'm like, dude, just look at the spot, look at position 5, or left shoulder, and then look at the net and just serve. And I said, just serve. I motion, just serve, right? So it comes in, and I can feel the presence of the parents. The parents are like, what is coach? Well,
What the hell is coach thinking?
It was like, well, obviously coach is thinking, I don't know what the hell a coach is thinking, right? So what does this kid do? He doesn't, I'm expecting like a standing floater, keep the ball in play, or maybe a jump floater, mix it up. Not this one.
Flips out the top spin?
This toss. High ass toss, right? And he jumps in the air, bow and arrow, just way off the ground, right? And when he swings, it hits this part of his hand. So when it hits that part of your hand, it's what old school players hate, but it's called the wrist away, right? And it wrist away. And maybe his mentality is aiming for shoulder, but it veers way from that guy's shoulder. And it goes in with a certain speed where the guy at position 4 dives for it and doesn't touch it. So it wasn't like off the player. It came with this speed and this 15 served at a 17-year-old speed and velocity, a clean ace past the diving guy for the match, right?
Wow.
And
Wow.
when we go to shake hands, I got to go by the parents' bench first because when you allowed to shake hands, that's that side of the court where you got to go this way.
Oh, they had
and the
stuff to
parents
say.
are just going, like, oh, you got. One of the parents literally came up and says, dude, you have balls, right? And the father of the kid kind of looked at me like,
Yeah.
you're all right, you know? Like, you're all right.
Yeah.
And I just go,
You love it when you look
let's
like a
go.
genius.
Yeah, but I had no reason to. Why would you put someone in that didn't serve the whole game if you really want to win? Why would you put someone in who's 2 years younger, who's the least experienced player, who's cold, who might miss?
No,
And
because
even,
you felt
and let's say he
something.
serves in. Who's to say he's not gonna? Who's to say he's gonna get the dig? And if he gets the dig, can't really use that kid out of the back real quick. He's he doesn't have the
Right.
size, right? It's just all these reasons not to do it. And every expert is like, dude, the only way this even works is if you know he's gonna get an ace, which I didn't know, and I didn't care. I just, what me what? You're the coach. You're the expert too. Why would I do that? Even now, that
You
was
know what?
2019. Even now, I don't know why I did that. But the parents looked at me like, man, that's Brooklyn testicular fortitude right there, dude. But the father was just going like, who really wanted his son to play with good players, but at the same time, if father wanted him to play, he had that look like, you're all right, man.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
all right. And yeah, that was great. I mean, I'll always have a job at Evolution because of that.
You acted instinctively in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and you were willing, no matter if it turned out good or bad, you were willing to make that decision in the moment. That's, again, going back to human design, human design has this thing called an authority.
Mm-hmm.
And your authority is meant to be how you make decisions. So
Right.
there's emotional authority that's supposed to weight the emotional wave. There's a sacral authority that's meant to respond to something being presented.
That's right.
There's a splenic authority that's mine, that's instinctual and in the moment. And I am very logical minded. I'm defined in my head and ajna, so I have a lot going on up here all the time, right? And so I can make a decision in the moment and then also talk myself out of the decision in the moment. And since I've leaned into human design, I'm working harder to be more aligned with my decision making by, like, if I have a gut instinct where it's like, oh, I'm looking down the bench and this kid looks like she's smiling and ready to go, you're in.
That put me in, coach face.
You're in.
Right? Wide-eyed and apprehensive and maybe a little scared. They just jump. They jump because you told them how to.
Yep.
They're ready, dude.
Yep.
Hey, before we go,
Uh-oh.
because we can go all day.
Yeah.
Right? We're
What are we
Joe
at?
Rogan
2
in this
hours?
right now.
Let's go.
Well, the good thing is I have the live stream, but that file runs out at 2:26, and then the other cartridge.
Okay, so
I'll make a decision
8
to put that
minutes.
in, or we
Okay.
can just wind down. So,
All right.
we're not going to do lightning rounds, but the subject matter in the lightning rounds is something I want to, instead of just
Okay.
these one-word answers. 2 questions about books. Wendy likes the last good book you read, which I want question 1, and 2, what book would you recommend coaches or maybe your kids read? So last good book you read is what?
Ooh.
Guess what I read? Look
It's
behind
been a
you.
while. Wendy's book?
Yeah,
Okay.
365 Days of Optimism. Wendy, I read your book, baby. And that book in the middle, Hate Inc., is gnarly. Like, I don't want to talk about politics now, but that's Matt Taibbi. He's an independent writer. He's the one that exposed the Twitter files.
Yes, we talked about him.
And he was a writer for Rolling Stone.
I'm currently reading Power versus Force.
Okay.
And then a book that I would recommend, and I was just talking about this over the weekend to my team, Zen and the Art of Happiness.
And wow. Zen and the Art of the Motorcycle is what I had before.
Zen and the Art of Happiness.
Nice.
The biggest takeaway for me was putting a more tangible spin on everything happens for a reason.
Right.
Right? Because if we're leaning into the energetic world around us everything is connected. Quantum physics, everything is connected energetically. Everything happens for a reason. But what those reasons are, we don't know.
All right.
So leaning into good, bad, and all things and just being like, this is where I'm meant to be. And whether I like it or not, it's going to be best for me because that's how.
I'm looking at the clock because if I'm
That's how it
going to do a
works.
clip, this is what I want to use. I want to do like a promo clip. That's it. That's our through line. But yeah, for me, I liked 365 Days of Optimism. There's also a game, The Inspired Athlete, written by Aaron Wexler at the very end where the volleyballs are. That's my volleyball stuff. The Inspired Athlete, I read the entire thing. And it's this guy, Aaron Wexler, he's the program director for West Coast Beach Volleyball, West Coast Volleyball. So many ups and downs in this guy's life, but his optimism is unflinching. It's so giddy.
Yeah.
And he knows I need him because I'm a hater. Right, by nature, and he usually positive guys don't like to be around guys like me because of that. But he knows he's my friend, and he calls me. And we hang with each other because he knows I need him. I need him more than he needs me. He knows that. Aww. But yeah. So favorite comedian, I plant my feet with Chappelle because there's a talent about being absurdly offensive, but the delivery of the joke is in a way where we can all laugh together is an art, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of jokes that David Chappelle tells. If anyone else said the same way, almost even verbatim, it's not funny and it's offensive. But Chappelle has a way of landing jokes that allows us to not take someone's insufficiency and tease them, but to take whatever their flaws are and poke fun at life.
Right.
And the life that surrounds it. And comedians are usually scared to do that. Comedians only think they have this rule they can only punch up and not punch down. But
yeah,
to me, I think the black comedian gives themselves permission to see what works and what doesn't. And
for sure,
please, more Chappelle in our lives.
Yeah, I like Chappelle a lot, but I usually say I like Dane Cook.
Dane Cook is awesome.
He's so funny,
isn't he?
So
the
funny.
SNL, look, he probably kept SNL more interesting for a while, right?
Yeah.
Because they have their ups and downs. Like I go back to Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood with Eddie Murphy, right?
Oh, dang.
To the to the Blues Brothers, to when it got dead, then it was alive again. And Cook was one of those people that kept it alive, right? So, last good movie you watched at home or in the theater?
Oh, well, I saw Honora in the movie theater.
Oh.
Which, yeah, kind of out of left field. It was random, but it was an interesting storyline, but funny. Like there were parts where like they made light of the like questionable situation.
Right.
And then I just saw on the plane flight to Vegas, I watched Juror Number 2. Have you heard that one yet?
Yeah,
I thought that was good. Like, obviously, I watched the trailer, so I knew how the story was going to go, but I thought it was an interesting twist. Like, that's my biggest complaint with movies right now is I feel like all the stories have been told. So it's like finding a story that actually keeps me on the edge of the seat or surprises me at the end. And I thought that was a well-done movie.
I watched Collateral, most recently with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx.
Yep.
Very B-ish movie, but when you got a bunch of A-listers getting together, having a good time with each other, Jada Pinkett Smith, Jamie Foxx, Tom Cruise was quite the character, and that was fun watching. That's just my most recent one. I'm not recommending that as my favorite to anybody. Calm yourselves. But a good series that I watched most recently was True Detective. The last season, the fourth season, this time the setting was in Alaska, the Alaskan Police Department, and there's a lot of mystic stuff that happens.
Okay.
And it's this beautiful mixture of existentialism about the trust you have in your neighbor or not thereof. I'm not saying that that's about that, but
right.
That element, that style of theater that they implemented in film, not to mention Theater of the Absurd, where you go through this cycle where you're right back where you started from, except it's a little bit worse. So they implemented in a genius way styles of theater that I, as an actor, to train to be an actor, can identify with. Where I'm like, bam, I could detect that. Bam, I could detect that.
Yeah.
So, True Detective, the most recent season, though I did see the first one too.
Did you watch the new series on Netflix, Running Point, with Kate Hudson?
No.
It's actually
It's the
well
only streaming
done.
service I don't have, but
Really?
I've been borrowing it from my sister, but I can't not like Chappelle and not have Netflix. So I'm gonna make that happen.
I do recommend it for anybody out there. It's a
Say it
good.
again.
It's Running Point with Kate Hudson. So funny. First season, 10 episodes or so. It's quick.
My
witty.
wife loves Jack Reacher.
So fun. Ooh. It's because he's hot.
He's big and beefy
Burly
and
man.
meaty looking and intellectual guy. There's nothing more scary
love
to
it.
me in life than a muscular guy I can't run away from. Right? Like a lot of the meatheads, I ain't scared because I'm like, man, you can't catch me. That looks like a guy that can catch you.
Right?
Then you try to run away, he's gonna catch you. Oh my God. So yeah, so what was your favorite sport outside of volleyball again? As far as spectating or participation?
Oh, best sport. I mean, I played soccer and softball, probably baseball.
Okay. I like baseball. Mine is still MMA. You know, I right now there's an oversaturation in the UFC where there's so many events. Like I have to develop the bandwidth to watch them all or pick my events wisely. So the pay-per-views take priority because I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to watch it, right?
Right.
Some of the freer shows that are top heavy main event. I'll make sure I watch the last two matches and some. You know, again, now that I got a little bit more time on my hands and now that I might, you know, Rob McLean and I used to do Sports Debate Tuesday and that was MMA driven.
Oh,
and I have MMA podcasters, Timmy B, who's in Fight and Sight podcast, promoting him right now. Catch him. He's fantastic. A lot of his interviews are in-house too, and he's Canadian, so people make the trip. Yeah, my favorite action film star growing up is still Bruce Willis. Die Hard is the classic movie for me. It's the measuring stick in which all good guy, bad guy movies were comparing and want to be like.
Yeah.
You know, and they got a lot of their points from a black and white film called Key Largo with Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall and Edward G. Robinson. Classic good guy, bad guy movie.
Gosh, your brain and all the information you have in it.
Yeah. Favorite conspiracy rabbit holes? I want to save that for later because we're live and I intend to keep this live version up without editing it. Because we got through this live thing in one piece.
Love it.
Right. You were all about that action, right?
Love it. Love the action.
You're a volleyball person and you kept it, you know, you kept me from driving us off of Mulholland. So
I can do that.
Any Ashley's part of Surfside, which I'm gonna change in the heading because I originally had a CVC, but I know I do remember.
You know better.
I know better. Yeah, that's called a mistake. You know that
We
whole
all make them.
that
We're
whole
human.
self-correction thing on our brain is something.
It's all good.
Something that I'm really good at. Self-correction.
It's all good.
They want to know what you've been up to. Is it Be Better Media? What handle do people want to go to?
Coach Ashley C is where I'm doing my alchemy for athletes and coaches, my human design content, and then also always doing podcast production and stuff for bebettermedia.life.
Looking like Demi Moore in that camera. I just looked at the split screen.
Demi Moore?
My goodness, yes. Charlie's Angels, G.I. Jane. Look, all of those Ghost. The dumber the movie, like the dumber the name, the better the movie, dude. Right? Like Ghost. Psst, that seemed like a kind of dumb name, but
It's a classic.
yeah. Whoopi got best supporting for that. All right, guys. So we're out of here. We got a recording, a hardware clocking down, so we have to make a decision.
You only have 90 seconds
to put in the new
What are you
cartridge.
gonna do?
I'm gonna say for all of you at home, for all of you on your iPads, for all of you on your desktop, who runs the world, old school, baby, old school. That is Ashley Clark. I am Jason DeBias. This is the Option Podcast. We're gonna hit my music. We are out of here. Come check out the Option Podcast on optionvb.com. It's also available on iTunes and Spotify and on YouTube under the NY Varsity Sports handle. You're going to love what you hear. Okay. I got